Thank you, Commissioner. For the record, my name is Noah Liu, and I'm counsel for the Conservative Party of Canada. Minister Blair, I want to ask you about the employment relationship you had with your former Chief of Staff, Zita Astervaz. Ms. Astervaz was hired as your Chief of Staff at the same time you were appointed as the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, correct?
That's correct.
Had you worked with Ms. Astervaz previously?
Not directly. I was aware she had served as a Chief of Staff to another minister in another ministry.
But you'd never worked together directly in any capacity?
No.
How did Ms. Astervaz come to be your Chief of Staff? And in particular, did the Prime Minister's office play any role in her becoming your Chief of Staff?
No, I interviewed a number of people. I had, in a previous ministerial role, I had another person who had served as my Chief of Staff, and that person was leaving the public service at that time. And so I had to interview available qualified people for that position. And again, Ms. Astervaz came with a pretty exceptional experience, particularly in a large ministry, the Department of National Defense. And so she was eventually selected by me to serve as my Chief of Staff.
And did anyone recommend Ms. Astervaz to you?
Many of the people I talked to talked about, including her, the minister with whom she had formerly worked, recommended her for her experience, her diligence, and that was very consistent with my discussion with her and my subsequent working with her.
But the PMO, no one in the PMO played any role in recommending or suggesting Ms. Astervaz?
They did not share with me any objections or concerns with respect to my selection of Ms. Astervaz, but Ms. Astervaz was my choice to be my Chief of Staff.
I'm going to move to discussing the warrant application that we've been discussing extensively this morning. Have you ever discussed the individual that was the subject of the warrant with anyone that works or worked in the Prime Minister's office?
No, sir, never.
And so I just have one final topic. The Van Wienen list that was associated with this warrant. Did you review that list carefully?
I reviewed the entire application package that was put before me very carefully, yes.
Would it surprise you to know if in the spring of 2021, your Chief of Staff did not know what a Van Wienen list was?
It's not a well-known element of law. It was a Supreme Court case from 1988, one of which, frankly, I was the officer in charge of dozens of wiretap investigations at that time, and I was quite familiar with it. But it is a somewhat, prior to this discussion, an obscure element of a requirement of warrant applications. And so I'm not surprised that someone may not have been familiar with that legal requirement.
Right, someone generally perhaps, but your Chief of Staff, that doesn't surprise you that the Chief of Staff of Public Safety, who'd been dealing with warrants from CSIS already for some time now?
I can't comment on what someone may or may not have known about that legal requirement. And as I said, it's the list of known persons is something quite familiar to those of us who dealt with those matters in Part 6 and in other legislation. But a lack of familiarity with it does not surprise me. Minister,
did you personally or professionally know anyone on that Van Wienen list?
I can't comment on that. And frankly, for me, that was irrelevant. Whether I knew anyone on a list of known persons isn't part of my legal obligation to review and approve the warrant if it's correct in form. So it's not a consideration that I took any note of.
Did you recognize any of the people on the Van Wienen list as being parliamentarians?
And again, I'm not going to say anything that would have the effect of potentially identifying anyone, because that would be quite improper.
And I have one final question for you, Minister. Were any of your cabinet colleagues included on the Van Wienen list?
And again, clever question, but the answer is the same. I'm not going to say anything that would tend to identify any individual on that list because it would be quite improper.
Okay, notwithstanding that, Commissioner, I trust that those questions will be noted and hopefully asked of the minister in camera if they haven't already been.
They are noted.
Okay, thank you very much.